Welcome back to the Isaac Abrams Show, everybody. I'm your host, Isaac Abrams. Today's very special guest, comedian and philanthropist, MONERAY MARTINEZ.
Hello, hi.
Tell me I said your name right.
Yeah, MONERAY MARTINEZ.
I've been obsessing about that all day.
Really?
Am I going to say it wrong?
You're like, is it monarey?
What's the worst someone's
Malibu.
ever...
People call me Malibu, Montana,
Malibu.
or I get Monterey all the time. They're like, who are you from Monterey, California? I'm like, there's no fucking T in it. Do you see it? But yeah.
The correct spelling and your Instagram handle will be under your face.
Oh, perfect.
Right now. Plug everything you got.
Yeah. Okay, so my Instagram is MONERAY M, and you'll have the spelling, so I don't have to spell it. And then my podcast is called the Shamic Podcast. It's part shaman, part comic, one healing podcast. And then my YouTube channel is also the Shamic.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
And you also produce a show called Hard Lemonade.
Oh, yeah. I also produce a show called Hard Lemonade in Franklin Village, me and Dan Postian. It's really dope. It's like a backyard show, party vibe. We grill. We have alcohol. We have this dope band called Strange Hotels who they've opened for Billie Eilish.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're really good.
They're so good. They've been on Conan. They're like indie pop, and they play instruments that you're like, you can do that?
And it's a two-person band.
Yeah, two-person band. They're super dope dudes too. Yeah. Like they're so down to earth, and we just have like a really fun. We just have like just a fun vibe. Anybody who like really likes music or comedy, it's just the spot to hang for sure.
What impresses me every time is that they're always available on the nights that you guys want to have shows. I'm like, they got to have another show.
They always have gigs. Like we do, like you guys just don't see the group chat of like, can we do this date? Can we do this date? Can we do this date?
You work around them.
Yeah, we work around them always. Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love the vibe in the backyard.
Yeah.
But for a little while, it was at the Roosevelt Hotel.
Yep.
And now it's back in the backyard.
It's back in the backyard. We love the Roosevelt. I think it's like a really swanky, cool like stage, and it looks dope. But it didn't really match our aesthetics of our actual like curated vibe. We're a little bit more chill, and I feel like the Roosevelt made it kind of more swanky, which it's like I could run a show like that. It just wasn't Hard Lemonade. Right. So we were just like, hey, aesthetically this is beautiful, but it's just not it's not what we were going for.
Yeah. It had an established vibe before you got to the hotel.
Totally. We had at least like 9 or 10 shows before the hotel, and so we were like, it was cool, and it like made it look like more. It just made it more Hollywood looking or whatever. And so we're like, this is dope. But also, as you know, being a comic, like ceilings and like space makes a huge difference in like how the laughter comes in.
Yeah.
And I feel like most comics felt like they were bombing there. And so they were like, it just doesn't feel compact.
Because if you've never been to the Roosevelt, in the little library theater they have, it's like kind of spread out and then also tiered up like amphitheater style.
Exactly.
But when you're not packed into the backyard, I don't want to make it sound uncomfortable, but like the community of being sat so closely together, when someone next to you is giggling uncontrollably, it's
contagious.
That's the word. I was going to say confectious. That's not a word.
But it's something. It's in the theme of what we're going for.
It's in the ballpark of contagious.
Yeah.
We don't really want to talk about things that are contagious now, though.
No.
Because they're bringing the mask mandate back.
Everything. They are for sure on the 29th, right?
I saw it on a comic's Instagram, so let's throw some salt over our shoulder and hope that it was like the most accurate news that we can get.
Yeah.
It might not be true.
It might. Okay. But for sure, the mask mandate is coming back for public places.
That's a statement?
No. I'm asking you.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah.
I saw someone who's very confident in their Instagram.
Got it.
Mentioned his name earlier before we started.
Oh, how funny. Yes. Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about then. Yeah.
So it could be bullshit.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I'll be participating in this round of masks.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to get too political on it. If I can't get a Starbucks without wearing a mask, I'll put a fucking mask on.
Yeah, for sure.
You are famously and undeniably unabashful about being a shaman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm super fascinated.
Yeah.
Because I know this much about shaman stuff.
Yeah. Was that 0?
Yes, that's
I didn't know if that was like cool. I was like,
this is the Proud Boys symbol for. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it is, but I wish I hadn't said that.
What's this? Is this a Proud Boy symbol too?
That's the TikTok for Trump is still our president, I think.
Okay, got it.
Being a shaman, were you like, how does that start? How do you go like, I think being shaman stuff is like.
I wouldn't consider myself like the most, obviously I'm not doing like ceremonies like in the Amazon like forest or anything like that, but the base of a shaman is someone who is able to use like plant medicines and alter their consciousness to then help other people alter their consciousness. And you do that with, you know, some type of psychedelic or plant medicine, to where you could go in and like heal people through, basically you're healing people through energetic realms. And what that means, because people are like, what the fuck, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. What realm are we
in?
What
realm was this? And you're like, the one where we owe a lot of money. That's the fucking realm. Okay?
Get me out of this realm.
Yeah. But realms or dimensions just means like, dimension just means that you're having two perceptions of the same thing. So it's like a dimension is like, it's two measurements of one thing. So like a dimension for, you know, a square, it's like height, width, and length. What is it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
squares.
Yeah, squares, you know, like, but a measurement is like height, width, depth, right?
Sure.
And so when you say dimension, when talking about reality, it just means like your perception of this. Say we're doing, what's this room, right? If we're in the third dimension, we're seeing everything in 3D. But if we're in the first dimension, we're seeing everything in molecule form. And if we're in like the fifth dimension, we're seeing it in energetic form. So it just means like dimensions are literally just different measurements of the same thing.
So it's very scientific.
Yeah, it's definitely scientific. So it's like, it's just, I always say that it depends who you're talking to, because it's like, if I were to ask a hippie, like, how do you define love? They're going to be like, love is when you go from your heart space and you feel energy go through your body and build momentum. And you're like, okay.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And then if you ask, like, if you're asking like a scientist, like what love is, and they're like, okay, love produces a hormone like oxytocin that also connects with dopamine and then gives you these neuron transmitters that signal. It's like they're going to give you, but they're both saying pretty much the same exact thing.
Yeah.
They're different expressions of the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
So whenever I talk about spiritual stuff, I try to like break it down to like where comics and people could like understand, and they're like, oh, that makes fucking sense. And it's not all hippy dippy, like woo woo, you know, so people can process it.
Cause I think people like myself, you know, I sit in the cheap seats mentally, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, I need help breaking it down. Like, there are a lot of $10 words that you just used, and I'm already thinking about the phone calls. This is coming out in 2 weeks. I'm thinking about my North Carolina buddies that are like, what
that witch say?
What's that fourth word she said, man? I don't understand all the endorphin shit. So is that something that you try and specialize in? Is breaking it down for like shaman stuff for dummies?
Yeah.
Like if you had to write that book?
Totally. I try to do it to where I'm just like, I try to make it seem like it's a fun like activity, like versus a spiritual thing where it's like, okay, like if I'm with like me and my girlfriends, like we're going to have, you know, somebody wants to have a little glass of wine and we want to have a good time. That's what we would normally do. And I'm like, okay, if you're making it spiritual, it's like, all right, we're going to microdose on some shrooms. And
Sick.
then we would be venting about our problems anyway. Right. So instead of venting your problems, we're going to purge them, or we're going to release them. We're going to write them on paper, but it'd be the same thing that we would do if we were just talking shit.
Right.
And then instead of, you know, one of us just sitting here and giving one girl like advice, we're like, all right, now we're just going to like try to put love into our body. It's the same thing. If you're having a bad day and I'm like, you're amazing, you're great, don't give up on your shit. Like, what is it? Yeah, I'm giving you love and I'm giving you affirmations.
Right.
So it's like when you describe things where it's like, hey, the same thing you do, we're just going to make it a little bit spiritual. So we're just sending a little bit more intention so we could have a little bit better of results. Like, that's all I'm like really guiding people like through. And then they're like, oh, so like I guide people through like acid or mushrooms or DMT, and I have them go under and I work through them with them, like through, because, you know, they might be seeing scary things, or they might see crazy things, or they might have just like childhood memories popping up, and we just like, I walk through them with it, like kind of like a friend. I'm just like their caretaker, like during their psychedelic experience. And that's kind of how I shaman people. Was there training for that? Is there like school? No, I kind of just did it to myself. And then once I started like going on this healing journey, and I hate like using those words because like you said, your friends in North Carolina or my friends in upstate New York, they're like, okay, this bitch again. But it's like when you start healing, all that means is like you're finally like looking at your shit, because we all have shit. Mm-hmm. Like every single one of us has shit lodged in our head, like from our subconscious, from all the shit we've seen. to subliminal messaging, television commercials, or music. Like, we're all programmed with a bunch of bullshit that we have no idea, you know? Then we also all battle with depression, anxiety, stress, fear. And so when the day that you go, I'm going to fucking handle this shit, and I'm going to make sure that, like, on a day-to-day basis, like, I feel okay in life, that's healing. Like, that's what healing is. It's just being like, hey, I'm not going to live in fear or stress or anxiety or sadness anymore. And when I did that, that's when I just started to be able to just get fucking psychic messages. And I was like,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to come back to psychic messages.
Yeah.
I just had my episode that comes out tomorrow, which will be 2 weeks ago as this comes live, was with Henry Sir. Do you know Henry Sir? Just moved here about a year ago during Pandy from Canada.
Okay. Canadian.
And he just started a podcast about, and we were chatting about the process of using psychedelics, but also having to get off of your meds that you're on before you can do the psychedelic journey.
Right.
So is there a process that you have to, like, verify that someone's not going to freak out, like, on whatever antidepressant they're already on?
Right. I mean, with that sort of thing, like, if it's someone that I don't know really well and I know that they're on, like, medication, like, I'll have them go through, like, because you could do, like, ketamine drips, like, professionally that are, like, legal. It's just way more expensive. I kind of really just do my own shaman stuff, like, with people that I really know, and with people that aren't on, like, medication or something, or they've been off for a while, because that's something that, like, I'm not a doctor or whatever, and I wouldn't feel comfortable. Like, they're like, oh, I'm on this medication and this, and I'd be like, I don't know, we might go to a dark side then, I don't want to tell you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, like, if it's someone like that, I'll be like, I'll give them a number of, like, a professional. Like, I have friends who are, you know, like, not a psychologist. What's the other one that you can prescribe medication? Yeah, psychiatrist. And so I'll be like, you need to see this person, or you need to see this person who does, like, the ketamine drips. And then, like, once they're off of something for a few months, then they'll come back to me.
Oh, that's cool. That's very responsible.
Yeah. I definitely, because I'm very, like, I was so scared to try drugs for the longest time in my whole life. So I'm very, like, let's make sure you're all good up here before you go diving into some of these realms. Because
you can sometimes go scary places.
For sure. And you could go scary places regardless of not being on medication. Like, you will also go to scary places for sure.
Yeah.
And, but I tell people, I'm like, the scary places, like, serve purpose, and the scary place isn't something you're going to, it's inside of you. And so, like, we're now trying to, like, break that shit down and figure out why it's there and what, like, how you can get out of it. And when you just have a guide with you, it feels 10 times better. Because usually when I'm doing an acid or mushroom trip with someone, they'll have a part where, like, demons or stress or something comes out, and you're like, and then once they, like, break through it, they're like, oh my God, I didn't think I was going to be able to get out of space. Like, thank you so much for helping. So that's why it's good to have someone really experienced with you.
Messages.
Yeah, messages.
We're getting messages, and we're not talking about emails. Do you have to be in the
downloads.
right? Do you have to be ready to receive, or is it just like, I'm shopping for carrots, and then bam, you get messages? Sometimes
that happens where I'll just be doing something really nonchalant, and what I notice the moments that it comes is, like, when I'm, like, in complete peace, like, where I'm just in bliss, and something. So usually it has to be through meditation, but there's times where it's like, yeah, I'm just walking and I'm not using really any brain power, and then boom, like, something just comes in and I'm like, oh shit. And then I'll message someone like, hey, did you talk to your mom or something? And then I mean, that sounds scary, I'm sorry.
You okay, Mom?
Yeah, I was like, call your mom.
Your mom. Everybody call your mom.
Everybody call your mom. Yeah. Call your mom. But yeah, so a lot of the times it does happen when I'm meditating though. And then, so I always explain it to people, because I'm like, it's really not that woo-woo, because people are like, come on, that's crazy, that's magical. And so everything, any physical thing, you know, Einstein says, like, all matter, it can't be created or it can't be destroyed. So thoughts are matter, meaning they have a vibrational pattern to it. It's just like these little molecules of hydrogen, whatever the fuck thoughts are. And so there are these little vibrating molecules, and if I think a thought, it goes out into the ether, just like oxygen does. You consume oxygen, there's other things in the atmosphere we're constantly consuming, we can't see it, but we consume it. Thoughts can be consumed as well. So sometimes when you're like, man, I'm just so stressed today, or I'm having such a bad, and it's like probably consuming a lot of thoughts that aren't your own, and you're like, oh fuck, like, that's why I'm in such a random bad mood, especially when you live in a city like this, where it's like so many people that have fear and anger and resentment, and they're trying to be celebrities and stars and disappointment. So all those thoughts and fears are just like, again, in the atmosphere, you consume that shit. So it's like it's easy for us to have anxiety or stress.
I had never really considered that anybody else's thought energy could be consumed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like exhaust. It's
like pollution.
Yeah,
and you consume the pollution, and everybody holds an energetic signature. So it's like you have your physical body, but you're producing electricity off of your own body. It's like when you get you ever see like a EKG machine? And when they hook you up to it and you see those little waves that come off of it, that's the electromagnetic energy that you physically are producing. So that means you are releasing an electromagnetic signature. So it's like your signature goes into a pollution of the atmosphere, and anybody else can pick it up. So that's why we say, like, it's our job as the collective or as a society to make it better by being like, you got to handle your shit. So this way you're not fucking toxic pollution and they're not toxic pollution.
Right.
And now we're all just consuming each other's toxic pollution.
All right.
So, so anyway, my point was saying that, so if everything's just these like vibrational patterns, I can pick up on it. So I get myself in a receptive state, which is through meditation, or you could do it through walking. You could do it through music. Art is such a great, like, people are like, oh, I just had this amazing idea for a song. It's like, yeah, because you're in this artistic state that is elevating your consciousness naturally. And elevating your consciousness just means that you're not stressed and you're not anxious and you're at peace. That's what elevating your because like sometimes you hear these terms and you're like, oh, that's what the fuck they're saying,
Right.
And so when you elevate your consciousness through any of these external practices, then all of a sudden these positive vibrational patterns have the chance to come to you, and then you can just consume them. And then because we speak language, we can, interpret. Yeah. And that's all it really is. That's all a psychic is just someone who's picking up external vibrational patterns and able to interpret.
I think the scariest thing, see, all of that makes sense. I'm totally tracking. Yeah. Because I'm here and I'm present and I'm focused with what you're saying. Yeah. But when you hear, like, sometimes it's easy to tune out when you start listening to like a string of sentences that are like big $10 words. But there is a translation for every single one of those phrases.
Totally.
Like mindfulness. It's just like, being present, or like focusing on the task at hand.
Right.
Or like when you said art, it was like when I made these little thingies on the wall. Yeah. It would take 5 days, but I was sitting at a sander, just like sanding all 6 sides, and it was like the one single task that I was focused on, and had some of the greatest ideas in my wood shop of all time, because it was just like repetitive motion over and over again.
Totally.
That's really fascinating, because when you break it down into like the words that you're not used to hearing in a different way, then it all starts to make sense and it's not so scary.
Totally. It's not scary and it's not like annoying. And like, I just always try to tell people, I'm like, dude, our brain is a giant machine, right? It's just software. And so the software, or it's just, which one's hardware? What's hardware again?
Hardware is like the actual physical computer, and then software can be downloaded.
Okay, so our brain is the hardware, and then we all have the ability to download different software, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like this software you can consume from other people, where you're like, okay, you might be more comedy and art, and this person might be more science and logic, and this person's more love and nurturing. So it's like there's all these different softwares that we're like, okay, let me download a bit of that, let me download that. But like some software isn't, compatible on some hard drives.
Some people are PCs and some people are Macs.
Exactly. So you have to learn how to approach somebody, because people think language is just, dialect, but like language is actually just like things in common, where it's like, if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, Super Saiyan, blah, blah, and you're going to be like, oh, I get it. But if this person's a dancer, I'm going to be like, pirouette, kickball change. And she's like, oh yeah, I get it. So you're really just learning how to like speak people's language. But some people don't know how. They don't, they're just like, nope, I'm hippie and get your crystals and whatever. And then everybody just tunes her out. You know?
We got to charge your crystals.
You have to charge your crystals.
I moved to the beach during Pandy.
Yeah.
And it's funny, on full moons, it's like you could go out to the beach and people are literally up their blankets out and they're just laying them out. And I'm like, charge them up.
Charge them up. Get the powers, girl. Get them. Beyonce charges her crystals, and I'm going to believe her.
If the act of going to the beach and sitting out under a full moon and hanging out with your crystals makes you feel better, who am I to be like, that's too woo-woo? Like, go have fun at midnight. Howl at the moon, dude. I don't care. It's when people go like, I believe this, and if you don't believe this, you're stupid. That's where I draw the line. Where it's like, well, let me believe what I want to believe, and I'll let you believe what, and then we can have a conversation about what we both believe, and maybe we can meet in the middle.
And maybe we could just both think each other's things are cool, you know?
Yeah.
Multiple realities can exist at once, and two truths can exist at the same time, you know?
That's
so, like,
true.
Your truth and my truth don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, go together, but it's like, doesn't mean yours isn't true for you and mine isn't true for me, you know?
You know, I was thinking about that a lot with when in the media they started going false news or fake news or whatever, and it's like, well, there's got to be a line at which like there are some truths, right? It's even in our Constitution, you know, we hold the truths to be inevitable or inevitable or whatever. I didn't memorize that, probably cut that out,
right?
But so where's the middle ground on like two people can have two truths? Is it in a side of ourselves we can have our own truths, but like collectively as a whole we have to agree on some truths?
I think people think truth is they want to use it as a synonym for like right or correct or absolute. And so like say right now something happened, there's a third person here and he says something, and to me I think it's rude, but to you think it's funny. And that's something where it's like, okay, those are two different truths, but like my experience is validated and your experience is validated. And it could be one of those things where it's like, that's like how a lot of reality is. It's like, for me, this thing is true. Like say someone insulted me and there's times where like maybe I'm defensive or maybe I'm projecting, or maybe that person is being passive aggressive and they are being rude or whatever. But it's like, just because that's my experience, it does not mean that it's the absolute truth. And just because you have an experience, it doesn't mean it's the absolute truth. So like, I think a lot of times, like, I probably don't want to get into that, but I was going to say like, sometimes with like, you hear some of these like cases or whatever, or say these situations with people going on these bad dates where someone's like, this is sexual abuse, and someone is like, hey, this is a bad date gone wrong. And it's like, those are the times where it's like, I can understand a circumstance, but then also I can understand another circumstance. And sometimes it's like the more understanding we are, people think we're enabling, but it's like, but sometimes we're not. We are being understanding and we're being objective, like despite our personal, you know, our personal interaction with the person or a thing. So I just think that, it's really important just to understand that like truth, it kind of is like a ripple effect where it's like for you, it's like your circle, but as you zoom out and zoom out and zoom out, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it means like more people can be affected by it. And when you're closer to it, it's just going to feel, that metaphor didn't really make sense as I kept going. But
it's okay.
I was like, yeah, it's not like a ripple, but it's just, the closer you are to the center of it, the more you feel like this is the complete reality. And it's like, it's not always.
And then, you know, as we learn more about certain situations, then our truth can change.
For sure.
I recently had a misunderstanding in my life that I'll tell you the whole hot tea after. But given more context, the person that was offended was like, oh, it was like this, not like that. And then you could see that the being offended changed into being hurt, and then it changed into understanding, and then it changed into forgiveness. And it was like, oh man, I didn't even know a week ago when we had this first chat that I was going to make you feel like this for a whole week. And if I had known that, first of all, I would never have told you this story. And second of all, I never meant to hurt you, but the perception was like, it like got to some previous trauma, and it was like, I had, you know, like I had no idea. That's going to seem really vague to everybody else. And you're going to have like an aha moment in a second after I tell you the real story, but we'll move on. What types of people can benefit from working with a person like yourself, this shaman?
I mean, I think honestly anyone, but I think it's specifically for people if one, you feel like life has no meaning or has no point to it, or you're sick of it, or you're like, I don't understand why we do this shit. If you're feeling depressed, because it's like, as soon as you do this type of work, it's almost like you have these outer body experiences and you see like reality again from like a zoomed out position versus like, I'm Isaac and I go to work and I, you know, have my show and I like comedy and I like photography, like you'll see life through without your individual expression on it, where you're like, oh fuck, when people are like, oh, we're all one, it's like, oh yeah, when you're not your physical body, you literally are this just energetic form bopping around in the goddamn sky. You have no physicality to you, and you're just this feeling of like, when people are like, I just felt this oneness and this pureness, it's like, yeah, you're just this, when you get like really excited, or like the first time you like make love to a new person and it feels amazing, like you just feel like that feeling where it's just like the whole entire time you're just that, but you have no physical form, you have no like differentiation between you and anything else. And so, but when we're down here, we are so individualized, and we are these like just, complete fucking things to ourselves. But it's like, at the same time, when you have that, that's when it's like you have so much anxiety and stress and fear and confusion, and you're like, I don't understand what the point of life is, and blah blah blah. But when you can take yourself out of it, you're like, oh, and now I get it, now I get love, now I get forgiveness, now I get fucking beauty, now I get nature. And it's like, you really have to like have these life experiences that like will show you how significant you are, and show you how insignificant like your emotions or your feelings towards things.
And is that with every treatment, or does every treatment vary? Like, do you get a different experience?
They all vary. So like ketamine is like a disassociative, mushrooms, to me, obviously it always matters how much you take, because people are like, yeah, I did microdose. I'm like, you're not going to see shit if you microdose. I'm like, you need to be taking 3.5 to 5 grams.
Wow.
Yeah, you really do.
Okay.
Like, if you want the real healing,
that's a ride and a half.
Yeah. It's 3.5 grams,
That, wow. How much is in an eighth?
An eighth is 3.5 grams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest I've ever come to, I mean, we used to do shrooms all the time, but we would split an eighth 3 ways or 4 ways.
Oh wait.
And I would go
an eighth? No.
I would go into the metaverse on a quarter of a.
Oh yeah. Wait, I want to double check. I think an eighth is 3.5 grams. Let me just double check that, because I'm like, before I sound like an idiot. But yeah, you like, that's like Alan Watts and Terrence McKenna, they always talk about, it's the problem is that people don't do enough. Like, so people will take like 1 gram or 2 grams or something, and it's like, it doesn't mean that you won't, like, you'll see visuals or whatever, but the medicine is really gonna like seep into the parts of your consciousness where it's like, I call it like a soul renovation. Like, when you go under like some of these like plant medicines, you're doing a whole soul like renovation. And when you renovate a house, you got to go in those guts, and you got to gut everything out to the bare bones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you got to clean it, then you remodel it, and then you got to fucking put it on the market, however it goes. But it's like, when you're doing shrooms, if you do 2 grams or 1.5 grams, it's like, oh, you're getting a deep cleaning done, or oh, maybe you did the floors, but you're not really gutting the whole entire thing.
That's very interesting, because I would consider myself to be very experienced with shrooms, but after what you just told me, I feel like a complete novice.
No.
That's what I take that I enjoy and I have a good time. But you're saying that like the real work is a couple grams deeper.
Wow. And by yourself, like, you can have a person like there with you, but like you wanna be by yourself, and you wanna meditate, and people are like, okay, I don't meditate, but it's like, all right, don't meditate. Put an eye mask over your eyes, put some music on, and just go lay down, and you're gonna see where like, oh shit, like, because I say drugs are like 12 years of therapy in one. So it's like, if you were to do therapy, could you do it at a party? No, because you're like, I can't hear the therapist.
No.
So when you do shrooms the real way, or when you do it not the real way, when you do shrooms like, and you take more, you don't want to be at a party. You don't want to be with a bunch of people, because you're like, oh, it's not gonna, it doesn't have permission to like go in, and you're not in a space where you're just like, all right, I'm silenced, my mind's clear, like, come to me now. Like, you'll probably have like spirits and shit come to you for sure if you do.
See, that sounds scary.
Yeah. It's called a hero. 5 grams is like a hero's dose.
Yeah,
but
I would call you a hero if you were on 5 grams.
But 3.5, that's why I was like 3.5 is probably chill. But if it's for people who have never done it, obviously start with a gram, like a gram and a half. And then, because here's the thing, you can microdose, sure. you're going to get a little tingly and you're going to be like, oh, this is nice, or oh, this is sweet, this is great. You're not really going to do the work. Like you want to do, if you're trying to do the work, I say you at least need 2 grams.
Is everybody ready for the work on their first trip?
No.
Because the biggest lesson we were taught, and I say this on the show all the time, when it comes to drugs, kids, when it comes to drugs, someone gives you drugs, you take half and you see how you feel, especially if it's a pill.
Yeah.
But shrooms are different. Like, they come in different shapes and sizes, and there's caps and there's stems, and not all of them have the same potency. And it's like, last time I had a cap and a stem and I had a great time at the party. That doesn't necessarily mean that like a cap and a stem sitting at home is going to get you to do the work.
Right.
And a cap and a stem next time might not even get you through the party.
Totally.
So is it like alcohol where like body type matters or or mass index?
I think for sure mass index will definitely like play a hand. But I think I always say that like shrooms doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need. Okay. And if you're taking a psychedelic, I'd say, do it under the pretense of being like, hey, if I got some shit in me, it's gonna come out. Like if you have a lot of anxiety or you have a lot of fear or you have a lot of, trauma, trust issues, like that it's not gonna just go away. It's going to be amplified now on it. But what it does is what people think like when they're having a bad trip, because I've had one time I was having a bad trip for like 4 hours straight and I couldn't get out of it. And I was like, God, and it was like the worst time of my life. And then once you really work through it and you go like, oh, and you learn to like look at it head on and be like, okay, what am I so scared of? Like, why is this happening? Like, what can I do? Like, where am I going? Like, once you like really like navigate it like that, then everything like started to change. And then the last 4 hours of the trip, I like got myself to be out of this like very, very scary, like rough phase. So I tell people it's like, there is a purpose to the bad tripping. And it's not like, oh my God, I took it and something's wrong with me. It's like, no, you took it and your shit came out and now you don't want to deal with it and you're having a bad trip.
I shared with Henry 2 weeks ago when we talked about psychedelics that the summer after my senior year in high school, I lived in a farmhouse with my best friend and his entire family.
Oh, cool.
We did acid 3 times a week.
Oh, wow.
We did 3 hits a week, 3 hits per trip. At the end of the summer, his brother that was selling, I don't want to say it was brother selling us. The gentleman that we were acquiring the acid from, told us it was triple dip. Yeah. So we were doing 9 hits 3 times a week. And the last 5 were insanely bad, and I was chasing the dragon. So it was like, I was like, oh, well, the next one has to be good. I can't end on a bad one. And it was bad one, bad one, bad one. And then it was so bad after the 5th one that it was just like
what was happening to you that was bad?
It was panic attacks. It was like fiery dragons. It was hell. It was demons. It was everything that you could think of. The floorboards were opening up, and like people were trying to suck me through the floor. It was like wandering out into the woods. How old were you? 18, 19.
There you go. Yeah. Anytime people have really, really bad trips, they're under the age of 25.
Really?
Yeah. It's I forget. It was either Terrence McKenna or Alan Watts. If you're interested in any of them, like they're like the masters of like talking about like altering consciousness, like from like a more science like perspective. But I forget what is happening in our brain, but after 25, like it's finally like fully developed or something.
Right.
And so they say like you shouldn't begin to take psychedelics until you're over 25. That's like a lot of people, it's something to do with like there's neuron pathways that aren't formed yet or whatever, but a lot of young people who have really bad trips, they're always the age of 25.
I didn't feel normal again until I turned 25.
Oh, really? Oh, how funny.
I was like a little weird, I was like, I walked with just a little bit of crazy going on for 6 years. It was a little nuts.
Damn. I bet.
But it's pretty crazy. When I turned 25, everything just kind of cleared up a little bit.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I kind of feel like good in this skin. This is kind of going to be who I am.
Right.
And that's funny because
that's very interesting. Yeah. There's so many great, psychonauts who like really have like, I mean, they've tripped like 200-300 times and like have just done so much like work on have published so much great work on the effects of like psychedelics and how like they've done like all these brain scans where they have your brain while you're on LSD acid or psilocybin, which mushrooms, DMT, I don't even know how to pronounce it, dimexamine, that's enough.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, and then ayahuasca and then marijuana. And so they have your brain scans, and basically like, so there's different parts of the brain where they can start to see that the neuron pathways or the receptors in your brain start to like light up. So when you're normal, it's like there's like little few areas that are lit up. When you're on marijuana, it's like there's a couple areas of your normal brain that are now not lit up, but then there's new areas that are lit up. Then on shrooms, there's all these pockets of like lights, but then like on acid, the whole entire thing is like lit up.
Wow.
Like, yeah. And so it's crazy. So it's like there's just different connections that like, you know, we have like 8 sections or however many in our brain. And like this part of your brain sometimes doesn't connect to this part of the brain, doesn't connect to this part. But when you take psychedelics, it helps your brain start to have all these like communication pathways that are connected now. And you're like, oh, because we think that how we perceive reality is exactly how it looks, or exact. But if you were to see it through a bird, or you see it through a dog, or see it through, you know, a fucking tree, whatever, it would all this physical, all these atoms and molecules made into physical form would not look exactly the same. So you're like, oh, so your brain literally is the thing deciding how all of this is. But you're like, but what if the wires were enhanced, or what if they were cleaned, or what if they were reprogrammed? Then how you perceive, you know, everything in front of you, or how you feel would be totally different.
Is there a case to be made, I'm probably asking the wrong person, is there a case to be made in the opposite direction, like taking psychedelics actually dirties the wires?
Yeah, I'm sure there's somebody out there who says it, but in the last 20 years, like there's so many people like neuroscientists, like where they're constantly publishing like blue ribbon, like data, like saying like they're like with MDMA, with ketamine, with psilocybin, DMT, that it's healing soldiers, it's healing PTSD, it's healing fucking, you know, unreleased trauma. It's like, they just have all the data now that, I mean, that's why they're, you know, pursuing it so hard to make a lot of these psychedelics legal, because it has such a positive like effect on people who have tried everything and it just like hasn't been able to work. So yeah.
Are you comfortable sharing how often you partake?
Yeah, I usually do like an acid or mushroom trip at least once or twice a month.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, okay. Sorry. My assumption would be like someone that's very heavily into this world would be like, I don't know, 4 times a week or whatever. Like I don't do shit. I just sit around and trip all the time, and then I tell other people how to trip. That seems very responsible.
Yeah. Because the thing is too, like, it's one of those things when you say chasing the dragon. So it's like many people who've done psychedelics like know that feeling of like, once you're in that altered state, like sometimes you just want to constantly be in that altered state.
100%.
Yeah. So you're like, but I've also learned, you know, through this, how to alter it without the psychedelic now. So it's like, it's not as strong as when I do it. Like when I do it with psychedelics, when I meditate, I'm like, oh, I'm leaving my body and I'm astral projecting. Like I'm fucking out there. But I can get into that space now just with meditation. It's a lot harder, but it's possible. That's why monks, when people are like, oh dude, like they meditate for 8 hours. I was like, you think they're meditating for 8 hours? Like for fun? No, these people are fucking astral projecting and they're seeing crazy stuff and they're experiencing past life. Like they're meditating because they can do the same thing that we can do when we take psychedelics. Like, and
they don't need psychedelics. They
don't
can just
need
do it with their brain.
Exactly.
When I was a kid, I used to, like, before I would go to sleep, I used to be able to, like, see myself leaving my body and fly around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I could
astral projection. Yeah.
Is that what it is?
That's astral projection.
I could fly right before I fell asleep.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so cool because I had never been in a helicopter. I didn't know what the top of my community looked like, but I could visually see it.
Yep. Yeah. So astral projection just means like, so when you hear astral, it just means like you're outside of your body, and projection is like sight. So you're seeing things outside of your body and you're like, how the fuck am I doing that?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. So you dream, right? Every single night your eyes are closed, but you can still see. And you're like, okay, I saw this, I saw that. It's in a dream, but it's like your eyes are fucking closed. You have vision. So it's like when you astral project, you're almost seeing that same thing where it's like, okay, my eyes are closed, but I'm able to have these experiences and able to like leave my body. But it's like, you know, when people say leave your body, they imagine like I'm floating up in the
like a hologram leaves them and there's 2 of them.
Exactly. But it's like, no, my physical body is staying in the bed, but like your mind's eye can leave. And the CIA used astral projection for many years. Like,
really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. If anybody's ever really interested, the CIA has been very fucking into psychedelics and LSD, and that whole Charles Manson thing. Like, they gave him LSD. Like, the CIA, they were like, it's wildly fascinating because they saw the potentials of the human mind and like what it can do. And so they used to use these psychics or these people who could astral project to locate like Russian fucking like missiles and shit.
Wow.
The special forces of like the FBI would use it for like missing children or like drug trafficking or like whatever. And it's all, they have all the shit, and it's like, it's been documented so many times, but people are just like, that's woo woo, that's whatever. And you're like, okay, well, why did they spend $60 billion fucking dollars on the shit? Not 60 billion. It's like 60 million or something. But
that reminds me, tonight's lottery, this is 2 weeks ago, is almost $800 million.
Oh my God.
I will be getting a lottery ticket after this. I'm going to shift gears for just a second. All this stuff is fascinating. I don't want to say that this shift is not because I'm not interested.
Oh my God, no, please.
But I do want to get to some of your comedy stuff. When did you start doing comedy, and in what city?
Yeah, I started in LA. I started in 2014. I took a year off, like 2017 to 2018, because I moved to New York and thought my life was going to be better. And then I was bartending out there like 5-6 nights a week and couldn't do comedy. But then I came back to LA in 2018, and so it's been about 8 years.
And you tour, or you've done road work with some of my favorite people. I think Steve Byrne is probably the biggest gem on this planet.
I love Steve Byrne.
He's amazing.
He's an amazing human. And you want to know what's so funny? Is I was a waitress at the W, and him and some friends came in. I didn't know who he was at the time. I was a big, huge stand-up fan, but I just didn't. He looked familiar, but I didn't know who he was. And I'm, sometimes I could just be like a sassy cunt or whatever. And I was joking around with him, and then he was like, "Do you do stand-up?" And I was like, "I do sketch and improv." He's like, "You should do stand-up." He's like, "I can just tell by your voice." He's like, "You're a stand-up comic." And I was like, "Okay, stop hitting on me." And he's like, "I'm married." And I was like, "Whatever." And I was like, okay. He's like, "I'm not interested in you. You're flat-chested." But that he didn't say that. Steve Byrne's so nice.
I thought you were saying that to Steve.
Oh no, I was saying he was saying that to me. Like,
they're like, "Shut up, Steve. You're flat-chested. I don't want to talk to you."
No, but yeah. And then years later, like I had auditioned to be a feature at ACC or whatever, and they're like, "Okay, like we'll start using you." And then they're like, one day messaged me, they're like, "Can you get here? Like something messed up. Can you come here in like 3 hours?" And I was like, okay. And I was like, "Who's it for?" And they're like, "Steve Byrne." And I was like, that's the motherfucker that told me to do stand-up. Yeah. So I was like, it's all divine, see? But yeah.
I shot Josh Adameyer's goddamn comedy jam at the Roxy.
Oh, awesome.
With Steve and Mark Maron. Before Pandy.
Yeah.
And then, like 6 months later, I was in Vegas.
Yeah.
At the Wynn.
Yeah.
And I'm just playing cards with my business partner, and I look up, and it's Steve and the sandwich guy from New York that he hangs out with all the time.
Joe DeRosa?
Joe DeRosa. Sorry, Joe.
Okay.
I know you're watching. So it's Steve and Joe walking through the Wynn, and I go, "I'll be right back." And I follow them outside, but when they get outside, they're talking to the amazing Jonathan.
Oh, yeah.
Because Steve just finished that documentary. And I was like, there's no fucking way, because I had just seen the other Amazing Jonathan documentary, and I didn't even know Steve was putting one out.
Yeah.
And I was like, not going to interrupt that. So I'm just calmly standing inside, wait for their conversation to end. Amazing Jonathan walks off. Joe and Steve jump in an Uber. I run up to the Uber and I knock on the window.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, "Hey guys, I photographed you here and I photographed you there and blah, blah, blah. Are you playing tonight?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're going to be down here. What's your name?" And I was like, "My name is blah, blah, blah. My name's Isaac." And he's like, "DM that to me. I'll get you on the list."
Aww.
Long story short, we go to the show. After the show, Steve comes right up. "What'd you think?" And I was like, "This is my friend Jeremy." And he was like, "We hung out till 4 a.m. He was like, super inclusive.
He's so good about that.
So great.
Yeah.
So great. Him and Joe were both fantastic. They had other friends, and they were like, it just snowballed in Vegas, right?
Totally.
We ended up with like 25 people.
He's one of those people that, like, if you're a comic or you're in the community, like, he'll always make sure, like, you're included and that he tries to connect you. If you're like, I'm a photographer and comic, but also I want to own my own podcast, like, studio, he'll be like, oh, here, meet this person. They have a podcast network. Oh, did you say photography? Okay, so this person has an art installation, whatever. Like, he's so good at always just making sure, like, everyone gets, like, he just has no ego whatsoever, and there's not a lot of comics like that,
right?
And there's not a lot of people like that,
especially with 3 seasons of their own sitcom on network. Like, usually they go, like, stratospheric, and they're like, don't talk to me anymore.
Yeah, or they're just not a comic anymore. They're like a person now, you know. They lose their comic, but he always his comic is always in the driver's seat, and that's what I appreciate, because, like, we can always just be comics where we're making fun of the situation, or, you know, whatever, like, he's always a comic, and he's great. And he's one of the first people that started taking me out on the road. And then I go out with Kurt Metzger. Do you know Kurt Metzger?
I saw Kurt last week at your show, 3 weeks ago. Space and time is weird when this is coming out.
Yeah.
I had never seen him before.
Oh, really?
Heard his name a million times.
Yeah.
He murdered me.
He's so funny.
I mean, like, would start a premise and I'm like, oh boy, and then, where are you going? And then just like, gah. And I was like, wow. I mean, so good. He's
so talented.
And at first I thought he was drunk. I was like, how is he going to play that?
No, he's just a goofy. He's like, well, now you have to watch White Precious, which is his special on. Everybody should watch. If you're a big comedy fan, it's like it's the comic special, like, where it's just such heavy, amazing joke writing, where it's so, like, nuanced and, like, ironic and just simple and silly, but just really, really, like, fine-tuned writing, where you're like, this man's brilliant.
Makes you want to quit sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. He's so fucking good.
I have to keep reminding myself that, because I watch every special that I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself that that's 2 years of a professional comic working on it every night.
Yeah.
And I can't judge my, like, 15 minutes of writing at the coffee shop this morning against their 2 years of playing that in front of 2,000 people at night.
Totally. And just having a fan base and just having, 15, 20 years in performing. And so it's like, it's very normal to want to compare yourself, but I think it's, we don't get to compare ourselves, like, when they're 8 years in. Like, I don't get to see Bill Burr's 8 years in, you know, because it's like, it was so many years ago, you know? So, but I think that it's, I think that more people should watch. There's so many stand-ups that I know where I'm like, you don't know stand-up.
Right.
And I'm like, and it's fine. To me, it's not fine. I was like, actually, to me, it's not fine.
Okay.
I'm judging them incredibly.
I think it's okay to judge people.
Yeah. That's what I do. It's the 3D realm. This is the realm of judgment.
Right.
Okay.
But, we're in the circle of judges right now.
Circle of judges, okay? Spirits right here.
What's the one thing that I noticed as a very, very old open micer? I'm definitely always the oldest guy in the open mic room. And I would always have my books.
Yeah.
I would always have 4 or 5, like, how to write stand-up books on me. And people would be making fun of me.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you fucking stupid. You need a book? I'm like, no, I'm old and I need to catch up very fast. And I need to learn all the tricks now. I don't have 15 years to try and get good at this.
For sure. Well, not only that, but it's just like, if you respect the art form, then you should want to consume as much information on it that you can. You know, like, I was always a diehard stand-up fan before I ever did it. And I looked at comics like fucking rock stars, and I started to be able to, one day, you can mark my words, like, one day when I'm very successful, I'm gonna have, like, a master class or something, because I'm like, I know that I know how to break down stand-up, where, like, I'll even talk to other stand-ups. I'm like, oh, it's this, that. And they're like, oh, I didn't think of it like that. I'm like, yeah, because you can't have a linear line of tags without switching from here. And they're like, what? But it's like,
it's psychology.
Totally.
And it all has to add up. And you can subconsciously tell people 2 jokes before your closer that you're not going to laugh at my closer because you said this is true about you. And then when you get to your closer, you're like, oh, the opposite's true. No, now it's not funny.
Right.
And, like, when I'll give people at Mike's notes, and they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I read it in a book.
Yeah, I read it in a book, motherfucker. Yeah. And just from watching it, where it's like, when I was younger, I thought that I didn't know that. I thought there was, like, a formula to stand up. And so I was, like, obsessed with breaking where I was like, oh, just let me see what the code is, and then I can do it for my. So I just watched so much of it all the time. And then I started to notice patterns that comics themselves probably don't even notice what they're doing or whatever. And I'm like, oh, they do this, and then they use this here, and then they put that there. They always have two things here, and then they have, like, a sublim, and they're like, I wasn't trying to do that. And I'm like, but it just starts to be like a thing that they're unaware of. But
yeah, I think that's what takes the 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think the internet and podcasting, like we listen to the best comedians in the world give us their pro tips for an hour a week.
Yeah.
And I mean, I literally listen to like probably 8 to 10 comic podcasts a week. And they all have the same people on it. And I've heard all the stories, but I still like it. But it's like, that to me, that's a masterclass.
Totally.
That's not something that was available 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
You had to just do it from like being, just being there live in the moment. And it's like, there's always blessings of time and technology. There's always curses as well. Sure. But the blessing is that, we have access to all these professional comics to constantly give us a blueprint to be like, okay, like here's the map and you do this, and you're going to get this. And then you can also learn from people's mistakes and like the fucked up shit that they did or said. And you're like, okay, don't do that. Don't put that there. Da, da, da.
Yeah. But it's also a slow burn to see like the older guys and what their premises kind of stay in and what the new class thinks. I'm not talking about woke shit. I'm not talking, it's just like a cultural shift of like, Bill Burr can't do an hour without saying that he's white. Yeah. And it's like, well, we get it that you are white. And we also get that you're in an interracial marriage and it applies to your life.
For sure.
But does that mean like every white dude needs to get up there and be like, I'm white, everybody? Like,
no.
And maybe I'm a little too close to that because I'm seeing a lot of amateur comedy.
Oh, for sure.
A lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just I'm beat to death with like trans jokes and I'm white, cis white jokes. It's just like, okay, I get it.
Totally. But a lot of those times, and especially when people are younger, and that's why sometimes it's a big advantage to start stand up when you're lit, because I didn't start until I was like 27. I'm 35 now. So, like,
happy birthday.
What'd you say?
Happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. I'm like, happy birthday. Everybody else? No.
Today's your birthday. And we'll put your Venmo right here.
Thank you so much. No. But it's one of those things where it's like you do have life experience, and people think like, it's not music and it's not acting, where it's like music and acting, like you just put something out and be viral and you just take off. But comedy is the one thing that it's like it does take years to master and get good at. And because it's like there's things and elements that it's like it just comes from repetition. And so when these people are like transgender and this, they have to take topical things because they don't even know who the fuck they are. They don't even know like what their life is about. They haven't really had that many transformative periods in their life. They haven't like went down. They're like, I was depressed one time, and I'm like, no, baby boy, like, well, have you been down?
Right.
Like real down?
The smoothie machine at McDonald's being broken is not depression.
Yeah. Or your parents getting a divorce is not a depression. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, you got to have like life really fucking hit you a few times. And then that's when your brain starts to be like, this isn't working. What is this? What is the point? What does it matter? And when your brain's having those thoughts, that's also when comedy has the chance to really fucking just leak out, because you're having so many questions and you're reflecting on who the fuck you are and what the fuck this all is. And
that makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Because this week I was like, oh, where's it gonna come from?
Yeah, no, it's gonna.
Because I'm finding my voice right now. It's just like, went from the topical thing to the write it out word for word thing to the take a premise to the stage and see if you can figure it out thing to the. It's just I hate that it takes years. Yeah. I want to be like, he started at like a very old and he's really good at it already. Like, I just want to be naturally good at it. Yeah. And that's just...
being naturally good is always going to come from authenticity and honesty, because that's all comics are really, is that we're narrating the environment and hopefully doing it in a comedic way. Like that's really all a comic is doing. Like when it's a bunch of people in a room, we're either narrating what's happening in society for the last year or whatever, or narrating what just happened in this room. This guy just fell, or that person just bombed, or they burnt the burgers, whatever it is, and then you're just narrating how you feel and how you're perceiving like your experiences. So it's like, if you always start from an authentic place, I look at it like, it's a lot like rap. So it's like, if a rapper, the ones that tend to be the most successful, obviously there's boppy rap where you're just like, ooh, this is in the club. And of course there's that. But the people who win best album of the year, it's going to be a little bit more conscious rap where it's like, okay, they're really saying something and they have a skill set. So that's the best in comedy too, is it's like, yeah, you could be Dave Attell, of course, he's one of the best of all times. And that guy's just a fucking legend of like, just can burn through material.
Yeah.
But the other greats are Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Dave Chappelle, because like those people are taking a truth and just literally, you know, installing funny into it. So it's better for us to digest.
Yeah.
And that's all it is, you know?
Yeah. And they make it look so easy that you're like, pfft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to write today, but I'll write tomorrow because this is, you know, it's easy. I'll write my new hour tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll break down government and society and how we are as people with my little jokes and just make everything chill and great and win a Grammy, whatever.
Yeah. Do you have a procrastination problem?
Yeah, I think every comic does. I think every artist does.
Yeah.
I think every artist is a procrastinator. Some of it is like fear-based, where it's like, this is your baby and you want it to be perfect. And sometimes if you want something to be perfect, you're like, I don't want to work on it yet. I'm not ready to work on it. Or like, it's not the right time. Or, but I also look at procrastination as a blessing. Sometimes I look at it as like an intuitive thing where it's like my gut just knows like, it's not the right time. When people are like, you got to get your pilot done. And I'm like, no, I know. Yes and no. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes I don't look at procrastination as always like as a flaw. I look at it as like an inner compass, just being like, I know when my time needs to be spent where, you know?
Yeah.
But it's a happy balance, because sometimes my laundry's not done right now. You know what I mean? Like I have to empty my dishwasher. I have to take out the garbage. So there are, you know, little life things that I should not procrastinate on. But when it comes to art, I'm a little bit more lenient on myself, where I used to not be.
Yeah.
I'd be very hard on my, like, you got to get this done. And I'm like, no, I just feel like as soon as I like let go and I surrender to shit, it just works. Because it's like dating, you know? If you go up to a girl and you're like, you want to go out? She'd be like, bro, chill.
Yeah, calm down.
Yeah, maybe she did like you, but because you're
not
like,
anymore.
Yeah, is it now? She's like, well, he's fucking clingy. But that's how success and career works. If you're like, am I gonna get this? I'm gonna get this, and like the universe is like, oh my god, you're so fucking annoying.
Yeah,
like you're gonna have all the things, but it's like, if you're like this all the time, or even at a restaurant, you order your food and the waitress will bring it. But if you're like, is it coming now? Is the cook making it? Did he do the part yet? Did he add this? They'd be like, go.
You're
like,
excused.
Yeah, like we're gonna fucking pay for your tab just to get you out, you know? So it's like there has to be some element of like surrender and trust, because if not, you're just having this anxious feeling. One, it feels like shit, but two, energetically, you are repelling shit from you. Yeah,
but I think the challenge is to walk that line between like aggressive pursuit of your goals without obsession. Yeah. Which is super hard.
It's very hard.
Because sometimes obsession can look like planning.
Passion.
Yeah, passion, or planning for, I'm just planning my career. It's like, you could be writing.
Totally.
Or you could be going up right now, or you could be like
you could be living and experiencing and traveling and having more things happen to you, or meeting people on a, you know, genuine basis that person's going to be your writing partner or something, but you're obsessing, like looking at numbers and algorithms trying to get your followers up, and you're like, oh, you're missing out on the people that have the fucking like network to plug you into that would help propel you, but now, you know what I mean? So there is a healthy balance, but you just have to, every time like you're doing something, you have to like ask yourself, like, am I doing this because I genuinely want to do it, or am I doing this because at the bottom of this, I'm a little bit scared that something's not going to happen for me, and so I'm fucking putting all this effort in to like ensure that it will.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, checking the analytics on your YouTube channel 27 times a day is not going to make your YouTube channel grow. Right. And that energy could be spent towards making a promo, or marketing it, or inviting more guests. Yeah. Because finding guests for your podcast is hard.
Yeah. It totally is.
Especially, I don't know if I'm gonna admit this on the show, but I might cut it out. Yeah. I have worked with quite a few people that would be great to have on the show. Yeah. And I'm scared to ask him. I just was fortunate enough to have Ryan Sickler on the show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I thought it was gonna blow. I mean, him and I have been friends for like 2 years. So we worked on a comedy special together. Yeah. But I waited, right? It wasn't like, as soon as I met him, it wasn't like, want to do my pod? It was like, you know, it's like, do you know Gary Vee? Give, ask, right? Yeah. So I went and did a couple favors for Ryan, and eventually when it was time to relaunch season 2, I was like, great. But now I want to ask, like, now I'm going to bleep all these names. Yeah.
I've worked with, I got to feature for him too at ACC.
Yeah.
He's great. I think he seems scary, but like he is great. And especially if he fucks with you, like if you've, you know, just shown support, like you said, like done work for him or whatever, like he's very receptive. Like, you know,
once he warms up to you,
once
and you're on the inside, it's beautiful.
Totally.
The first like 3 days on the bus together was like, I'm gonna sit here, and I'm just gonna be quiet.
Totally.
And if he asks me a question, I'm gonna try and hit him with a zinger. But I think the thing on tour buses that you know you're being funny is if you just sit like casually, just like slide something, and then the headliner's like, yeah, so the thing about that is, and then they riff on it. That's to me the biggest compliment. They're not gonna be like, yeah, Isaac, that was really funny. They're like, thanks, camera guy.
Totally.
So I'm kind of scattered all over the place here, but I'm gonna wrap it up with 2 more questions because we're right at an hour. If you could call yourself in March 2020, knowing exactly what you know now, what would you tell yourself pre-Pandy?
Pre-Pandy, I like that you always say Pandy, by the way.
Stole it from Andrew Santino.
Okay. Pre-Pandy, I would say that don't worry, you're going to be taken care of, because during the pandemic was probably the time that I worked the most. Like, I was going out with Steve, I was going out with Kurt, I was going out with Drew Lynch. I just went out with Bobby Lee, where I'm like, okay, like, just relax, because everybody's like, everything's shutting down, we're not gonna have stand-up, like, you're not gonna make money, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I did the most stand-up. Like, I was constantly working, not more than everybody, but I'm just saying I did the most stand-up for my life. Oh,
you did the most.
You
get the award for the most stand-up during Pandy.
For my life.
Yeah,
but
got it.
You know what I mean? Like, just more than I had done in the past. So I'm like, and then the other thing was, I would say, is take advantage of the time, and it doesn't always mean work. Like, when people are like, oh, I got to make a podcast, I got to write a pilot, I got to write a movie, I got to finish a book, and I'm like, or you could finally heal all that daddy trauma that you always yell about on stage and sometimes get drunk every other third month when you drink whiskey. Or you could do that work. You know what I mean? Or you could clean out that fucking closet that you haven't, and your cat's been dead and you haven't gotten rid of the fucking litter box or whatever, you know, personal experience with someone that I know. But it's, you know,
they had a dead cat in their house for weeks.
The cat was gone, but all the the litter box and shit was still there. And I'm like, that has to go. I get the poop is gone, but the whole litter box got to go.
It's getting better and better every time we clarify that. Like, dead cat, still poops, no poops. Okay. Wow.
I think there's no poop, but it's just one of those things where it's like, people think work means only career, but it's like, you have personal work. I'm like, call the fucking girl in high school that you haven't talked to in 2 years because you're or whatever. It's like, there's other work to be done that's not career related. And that's like a lot of the work that I did, where I was like, let me just go in and like, I just feel like I really healed my body. Like, I detoxed, and I, you know, went and camped, and like went to the fucking river and just purged and just ate fruits and like, just really do work on you, not what you do for money, not what you do for fucking social media, just like you, you know? And so I kind of had the best time during the pandemic, if I'm not lying. I had an amazing year.
2020 was a really great year for our company. We ended up doing a ton of video game podcasting.
Oh, amazing.
And consulting for CEOs on how to live stream to their corporations. And it was like, that was awesome.
Yes. Everybody that I know that was like, hey, I'm not going to live my life in fear. And there's no such thing as one time ever being an absolute bad time or an absolute great time. It's always just what you have to be, the person to take shit and make gold. And whether you mush it up and you let rainwater sit on it and that's how you make gold, or whether you just stare at it and just turn, like, there's a way to take shit and make gold. And Facebook was an idea. Bill Gates fucking whatever the shit he made, Gateway Computer, that's an idea. Like, he didn't like physically make something. Like, Steve Jobs didn't fit. It's like, you just have to have good ideas. And you'll get good ideas when you're just in a chill space where you're not stressed. So get yourself unstressed, get the good ideas, and then you make gold. That's all it is.
You make it sound so easy. Yeah.
I've just done it so many times in my own life, and not to be too great, but it's like, you know, if I could go through like abuse and sexual trauma and poverty and food stamps, it's like, I went through all of that constantly my whole entire life. And I'm like, if I learned how to take every single one of those aspects and make it into something that financially now is in my pocket, I'm like, anybody can do it, you know?
That's a hell of a segue to my last question. And I don't know if I worded this in a sexist way, but I'm hoping that you'll correct me. No. What are some ways, I wrote people, but in parentheses I said men. What are some ways that men can better serve women with traumatic experiences?
I mean, I think it's definitely a men and women thing, because I definitely have dealt with women who are, very like competitive or shitty, like with, sexual, or what did you say? Is this abuse or? With
traumatic experiences. It doesn't have to be any specific trauma.
Yeah. I think people, how they can just deal better with people with traumatic experiences is just listen. Because a lot of times, like for me, if I'm saying something and it's like, I'm fine, but when I tell you and you go like, oh my God, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like you're making me, not saying you, but like the general they make you feel like you're, to be pitied, or they're making you feel like, or they'll be like, ooh, that's so dark, or like, oh God, like that's so uncomfortable. And it's like, yeah, how the fuck do you think I feel? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's always nicer. Like, that's why we love comics, because like if I say something fucked up, they're just like, if I'm like, oh yeah, he shot himself in the head, and they're like, well, at least you'll have a fun funeral to go to this weekend. It's like they say something to like make you have relief versus like make you like think about it more. So I think the best thing to do is just like listen, and you can kind of get the person's vibe. If the person seems like they're a person, I'm like, you need to work that out, and you're like not okay, then you could just give them like lead the way and just be like, I talked to this therapist and it really helped me. I think it could really help you, Or if they're a person that you can tell they're just joking about it, then make jokes about it. And then if they're a person that it seems like, they just like need someone to comfort them, just be like, wow, damn, like that's crazy what you went through, but it's so awesome that you can talk about it. Like, I think you're a badass. Like, I think just listening and kind of just gauging what the fuck the person needs.
And sometimes when I can't tell, I have to ask.
Yeah.
Do you want to vent or do you want advice?
Yeah.
Because I'm a fixer. So if someone goes, oh, this person said this and this person said that, and I'm like, well, then you should have said this shit right here. That'll fix all this shit. And sometimes I need to remind myself to shut the fuck up and just listen a little bit.
Yeah. Men are naturally solution oriented, which is not a bad thing. It's a great thing. And that's sometimes a lot of the disconnect between men and women is we're like, I don't need you to fix it. Just listen. But at the same time, women can be like, oh, that's so sweet. He's like trying to like reach a solution for me. And so I have had to work with, partners in my life or something. And I have to be like, hey, I'll start it off by being like, hey, I just want to vent. If you don't mind, like, I just want you to listen. Like, I don't need anything.
It's a great start.
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And that, because I used to get very defensive if I was saying something. He's like, well, just do this. And I'm like, I can't just, like that Kanye moment, like, you don't know, Sway. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
And it's like that shit. And I'm like, oh, I could have just told him to start off by like being like, hey, I just need to vent.
Yeah. Sometimes, I don't want to speak for all men, but definitely for me, a big, not any specific colored flag, but some kind of flag was just like, this is where I'm going. It's like, oh, okay, I'll go with you anywhere you want to go. I just need to know what road we're on.
Yeah.
Because in my life, sometimes the challenge has been like either misinterpreting or clearly interpreting what was said, but the underlying message behind what was said was actually meant to be read deeper. Totally. And I took it for surface level. And you would think that with having 3 sisters and a mom that I would be able to read the code by now. But it just sometimes it's just like you're not in that headspace to go like, what's the meaning behind the meaning behind the meaning? Usually a lot of the times, obviously I can't speak for all women, sorry I keep hitting this, is like women when they usually just want someone to listen or to nurture. Like women were really big on like receiving nurturement. I don't know if that's a word. It is.
But yeah, but just feeling like we have a support system and feeling like we have a rock. And to us, it's not necessarily a solution. It's just being like, man, that is really hard. Or like, damn, like, wow, you did go through a lot. Or fuck, I feel bad for you, but I know you'll find a way. When we just feel supported and like our person is just like rooting for us and just being, someone to listen to, then we're like, okay, like, that's it,
Right. Just need to get that out.
Yeah. And then you can offer like comfort solutions. Like, okay, I feel like, why don't we watch Little Mermaid and go get some vegan ice cream? And then we're like, okay, yeah. And then we're happy.
Nice. I'm assuming you are a fan of the Little Mermaid and vegan ice cream.
Yes, all those things.
Does it taste like real ice cream?
There's, if you are in the LA area and you want a good vegan milkshake, it's at Fred 62. That's not coconutty. I hate coconutty fucking vegan ice cream, and that's a lot of it. And and I'm not for it. Okay.
Okay.
I'm lactose intolerant, and I'm looking out for you guys.
Lactose intolerant vegan milkshakes.
Yes.
They don't rock the boat.
They don't rock the boat. No, there's a lot of them that they just taste like coconut, and I'm like, that's not. I don't want coconut.
No.
I want vegan milkshake that doesn't taste like vegan, and Fred 62 has it.
Okay. Fred 62. It is. I have to try this because I can't even imagine.
They have like Oreo. They don't just have chocolate strawberry. They have Oreo. They have like a M&M one. They have like, they got flavors.
How long have you been vegan?
I'm not a vegan.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I just don't eat dairy.
Got
I
it.
Eat meat, but very seldomly.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Buffalo. Like chicken wings, like is very much a part of my DNA. So I do love chicken wings, and then once in a while I do love a steak. But on my day to day, I don't really eat meat. It's like kind of like a specialty thing for me.
Okay.
But yeah, because I feel bad. I always think animals are mad at me, and it makes me sad.
They are. They called earlier.
They're called.
The animals called.
And they go, said, is Monterey coming?
Yeah.
Let her know we're mad at her.
We're still mad at her. Okay, I'll let her know.
Yeah.
2 last rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You can take as long as you want to answer them. There is no pressure here.
Okay.
I stole this from Pete Holmes from his podcast, but I like it so much.
Yeah.
What is the time that you've laughed the hardest?
One of the times, like from watching stand-up or from like real life?
There's no parameters on it.
Okay.
Like, it could be, my favorite times are when I'm chilling with my friends, but like your friends could be comics, so it could be at a comedy show, it could be anywhere.
I mean, obviously my favorite thing in the world to do is to watch stand-up, but from like a real life moment, I love when I share my crazy stories with other people and like we're laughing at it together. Because to me, it's like, yeah, all the stuff in your life is hard. Like, say I'm talking about my drug addict dad or something and he did something, but I'm telling the story funny. And when people can get in on it with me and they're not hearing the scary part or the sad part.
Or they don't get scared. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're just cracking up laughing and just like that. Those are like the hardest I ever laugh. Or like, you know, say I'm dating a new guy or something and I'll tell him a story. I'm like, well, you know, I'm telling him about how, you know, sorry, it sounds bad, but when I got molested or something, and like, we're just like, you're like, when we're just laughing about it.
I didn't mean it as like
no. You're like, turn the cameras off. No.
Delete.
delete. Should have never asked her. No. But, that to me is like my funnest times is like when the thing that used to hurt me is the thing that I'm cracking up the most with someone I love.
Right.
Like that's like the hardest I laugh probably.
That's interesting to bring like a partner in on such an, you know, some deep cuts.
Yeah. But like when they like, that's like, I love being made fun of. Like I love like, you know, as long as it's like, they're not just like, yeah, you're a fucking cunt.
Right.
Cunt.
Still like, lighthearted.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right.
But like when, what did I forget? I was like dating this one guy and he's just like, okay. And I was saying something where I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. And he's like, you're from trash. Like, he's like, you were on food stamps. Like, don't act like you're better than this.
Yeah.
And it just made me laugh. It's like, oh yeah, I am being a little brat right now.
Yeah.
And who the fuck do I think I am? And it's like that, like if you make fun of me and it's like accurate about my real shit and it's funny, I laugh the hardest at that.
Yeah. For me,
narcissist.
There's a little like, I can kick my dog, but you can't kick my dog kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. I'm gonna give it a shot. Be like, let's all make fun of like trauma.
Yeah, because it's fun. Because it's like, because it as soon as you learn to like let go of it. Because if you can't laugh about it or you can't have other people laugh about it, that means it still bothers you. So then you're like, fuck. I guess I'm not really healed from it.
True.
So,
I compartmentalize like who I'll let laugh about what.
Yeah.
So like my dad passed when I was 27. So I hang out with a bunch of people whose dads are dead. We call it the DDC, the Dead Dad Club, and we all make dead.
We need another club. D. Dead dads dancing during dinner. I was gonna say festival. No, whatever. I'll come up with it. But
okay,
we can keep going.
Where are you going? We're going quad D on that.
Yeah.
That's cool. But yeah, that's who I would make dad jokes with because it felt safe because everybody felt the same way. So maybe I'll expand my horizons. I'm gonna try it. I feel empowered now.
Because you'll get bothered a little bit. There's like time where you're like, ugh, and then you're like, wait, but why am I I know the person's just trying to make a joke. They're just trying to make me laugh, and then you're like, it's a thing. Yeah.
All right, last question. Well, it doesn't have to be the last question, but the last question I have written here. We got through all of them.
Okay.
What's the greatest meal you've ever had?
Greatest meal I've ever had. One time I was hanging out with this girl who's a Russian prostitute kind of, but she would just date really like wealthy men, and this one Asian guy in a wheelchair that she was dating, not that either of those matter, but he was cool. And it was cool that he was in a wheelchair because we got to like get into everywhere fast.
No stairs. All ramps.
Yeah. Well, elevators too.
Yeah.
Those are a part of, and he had to drive this van. Anyway, but her and I used to work at this really like shady bar, and he became one of her customers, and he's like, I'll pay you like lots of money if you go out to dinner. And she was like, can I bring my friend? And she's like, you have to pay us to go to dinner. And I was like, I'm just excited for the food, but he still gave me money too, which I guess makes me an accomplice, which makes me guilty. But
guilty of what? Having a dinner?
Having a great time with a man in a wheelchair who needs a little bit of love too.
Sounds like he could afford it.
Yeah. Hello. And so we went to this place. It's called Hump. It was in Santa Monica in that private airport. Yeah. And it was a restaurant there. It got shut down, but it was the most amazing. Like there's no menu. It's all omakase. They just like give you round after round. And I looked at the check after it was just 3 people. And we weren't even drinking, and it was $700, the bill.
Wow.
I was like, whoa. But it was like just the most amazing sushi. And like they also had like little, but it's just all like, what is it called when there's like a bunch of little like courses, like just
small
course.
Plate?
Yeah. Just course after course after course. Like there was like shit with like gold on it. Like there was just
gold shit.
Yeah. There was gold shit.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh. This was not some regular guy.
Like edible gold shit.
Yeah. Edible gold shit. Yeah. I was like, no, I mean, I like shifted to chew.
Are the plates gold? Are the forks gold?
Yeah. Just the guy making it had a gold watch on, whatever. Was
That's
fancy.
So redneck. You're like, some of the plates had some gold on them. That's how fancy that shit was.
Yeah, they had napkins that like you have to wash.
I had to get a black one because the white one gets fuzzies on my shirt.
All over my sweatpants. But it was really nice. Like it was, I mean, the ambiance wasn't anything, but the food, I was like, wow. And it made me for like 1 second be like, can I meet other men that are just gonna pay? Yeah, they're just gonna pay me $300 and also pay for my food. But then we went to a nightclub after, and like she had to like roll him around and stuff, which God bless, like, you know, somebody's got to roll him around. And everybody was like looking at us because we were both like tall and like high heels, and like I feel like everybody thought I was a prostitute, and made me be like, I can't do this, because if I was a prostitute, I'd be fine with it, but I don't want people to think I'm a prostitute, because I was like,
right, it's like you don't want people to think you eat or consume dairy.
Yeah, no,
because you're not a dairy consumer.
I'm not a dairy girl, and I would like the public to know I'm not a dairy girl.
But if you chose to try dairy for money one time, that's your choice.
That's my choice,
and there's no shame in that.
There's no shame in that. I've thought of many of times in my life where I was like, you know, I don't come from a family with money, and I don't.
It's just a little dairy for money.
That's why I was like, do I have to milk this cow? You know, I'm gonna have to milk this cow.
You got it. This is a fun chat.
Yeah, it was very fun.
Thank you for coming.
Me.
Do you want to plug everything one more time?
Yes. So again, you can check out my podcast, The Shamic, if you like more spiritual stuff that's like in a comedy filter. You're going to check that out. And it's also The Shamic on YouTube. And then my Instagram, again, is at MONERAY M. And yeah, you can just find me all on there and say hello.
Say hello. Get in those DMs. Offer the milk.
Yeah, give me that milk.
Clip in that.
Yeah.
Give me that milk.
Give me that milk.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Isaac Abrams Show.
Bye.